What's going on, guys? What's going on, girls? Sal here, back again on Thursday. Going to give you this Draftkings Week 13 NFL breakdown. I just want to point out that these aren't going to be like picks or anything like that. It's basically just me looking at position by position. We're going to go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, maybe touch on defense, and just let you guys know what I'm just looking at or interested in, some stats about specific players. Not going to be a player-by-player thing, just really what stands out to me. I also want to say that this is going to be the 500 subscriber giveaway video. We're at like 580 now, approaching 600. We broke through 500, I think Thanksgiving morning, so I got the text from YouTube or the email, and it's pretty cool. So basically what the giveaway is going to be is a lifetime membership to Draft Dashboard. And this right here, if you just look right now, is Draft Dashboard. I've showed it a couple times before. I worked it out with a deal with the guy who runs it named Chris. We're going to give a lifetime membership. So literally that offer will expire when you expire, basically. So for free, it's going to be a giveaway. The way you get in, you have to be a subscriber. So I'll check to see the subscribers that are doing this giveaway. You comment below who you think is going to be the quarterback that scores the most DraftKings, not FanDuel or DraftKings points. On Sunday's main slate, there's 13 games, so there's basically 26 quarterbacks to pick from. You can pick out of any of those guys, and if you hit it, multiple people pick the right quarterback, we'll just put both names or however many names into an optimizer. If nobody picks a top quarterback, we'll go down into like the second highest scoring until we get a winner. But yeah, lifetime membership. I've already showed you guys a couple times. If this is your first time here and you haven't subscribed yet, to get into this, go ahead and subscribe, and also to see this great content, notification bell, like button. And then comment below. So you can see that this is this week's slate. You get projections on here. Right here you can see their projections, as well as seeing just really what they've been doing touch-wise. So that might not be as beneficial for like a quarterback. So if we were to look at running backs, you get to see their percentage of team touches. You get to see their snap count, which is very important, especially for when you're trying to find value more so than some of these stud running backs. We already know snap count. Christian McCaffrey, 97%. That's absolutely ridiculous. A reason why you should love him. Reason why he went off last week, which has really been coming. But yeah, so you get this giveaway. Get in the comments below. It's also in there if you want to just kind of check it out. There's a link to it. They're giving away this tool for 30 days, full access for $1. You can do any single sport as you see up here: NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB. So 30 days for $1. If you don't get that lifetime guarantee, you could check that out. But yeah, lifetime membership to this is actually pretty crazy. I don't even think I have a lifetime membership, so that's pretty nuts. But we'll get off of that for now, and we'll really get into this. So I'm going to break it down, like I said, position by position. We'll break down Week 13. We'll get into this video for you guys. And yeah, we'll try and help you out as much as you can, breaking through a lot of this stuff. I'll let you maybe know some of the other resources I use, both tools-wise, aside from Draft Dashboard, as well as just like personalities in the daily fantasy industry that I think are very useful. I'll drop those, and I'll try and hit on them later if I can remember, but I'll drop those in the description as well. So starting with QB, I touched on this in the first look lineup, which if you've seen that video, that lineup has completely really changed for me since there's a lot of value opening up at other positions. I still do think Matt Stafford is sneaky if they can get blocking for him, which is going to be tough. The Rams do get pressure on the quarterback, and the Lions just kind of give it up. So, but I do think it's a good spot for him at his price, especially tournament-wise. I did put him in my cash game lineup. Probably not going to end up doing that. Just something that was clearly a mistake on first look, but on first look, you can't really digest a lot of the slate. But yeah, so Patty Mahomes, he's expensive. I like him in tournaments and cash. He's just not where I'm going to go. You can get up to him due to the value that we're going to see at running back coming up here. The next thing I'm going to look at is Cam Newton as well as Jameis Winston. I feel like Cam Newton versus Jameis Winston is going to be kind of where a lot of people go in cash this week. Cam Newton for rightful reasons. I mean, he scored, what, 21, 22 fantasy points against the Bucs a few weeks back, and that was in a game where everything really went wrong for him, right? Didn't have a ton of rushing yards. The fullback scored a touchdown like the first drive. McCaffrey, I think, got in the end zone, and Curtis Samuel got in the end zone. So a lot of rushing touchdowns took away from Cam's potential upside. Even if he gets one more touchdown only through the air there, he's got you over 25 points, which is a smash spot for any quarterback. Especially upwards of 30. So I like Cam Newton again a lot. I'm trying to build a lot of lineups around him with cheaper running backs. I think that's going to be the way this slate goes, mid-tier at tight end. Now that you have Ebron there, you have Njoku there, you have Greg Olsen, a lot of guys that are going to be targeted. And that's just how I'm picturing this slate. And you can go mid-tier and get up for one, maybe two, more expensive in the 7, 8, low, high 6s, low 7s wide receiver range if you do find value at running back. So now that I digested the slate, that's what I have seen to be interesting for me. I will point out that Aaron Rodgers is dirt cheap, but he's a huge, like a 14-point home favorite. That doesn't really bode well for either side of quarterbacks when you check the trends throughout time and correlations. Neither quarterback in huge spread games does well, and you could say that the trailing quarterback should do a little bit well because they're playing from behind, easier coverages, and they do a little bit more well than the home favorite, just because Aaron Rodgers is probably going to hand the ball off more to Aaron Jones in a game like that. Don't have to thread the needle as much, but on the other side of this, I don't even like Josh Rosen either, and it just means that they're probably not implied for many points most of the time, and that's what we see for sure here. But like I said, I touched on Jameis Winston. They're both in a very high total game. Now it's the second high total behind the Chiefs and Raiders, and the Chiefs team just literally on their own pushes totals to be the highlight of the week. Lamar Jackson, I love this week. Now that I look at it more, it seems like Joe Flacco isn't going to be there for a while. Last week, Joe Flacco sat out, and they didn't have Lamar run. He only ran like once in the first half, got going in the second half, had that big like 40-yard run that really put him over the top for you, getting you over 20 points in fantasy, smashing value last week as he did in his week before. Now he goes up against Atlanta, who can't guard running backs. That's basically what Lamar has been. 39 rushing attempts in 2 games as a quarterback. That's absolutely ridiculous. So I do like Lamar Jackson in this spot. It did seem last week that they were trying to get him to pass the ball a little bit more. Second half, they got away from that. Maybe that means Joe Flacco's not going to be coming back for a while. They want to be a little bit safer with Lamar, judging since they don't have really anybody behind him that they're confident in. And sure, you drafted this kid early. Like, you want him to stay healthy, develop as a quarterback if Flacco's not going to be there, especially if they have a chance at making the playoffs. Slim chance, but they still have a chance. Coming down a little bit more, a guy I want to touch on who I think is going to be under the radar, Mitch Trubisky. So, look, Mitch Trubisky sat on Thanksgiving, but this man has won. He's been on 3 Millie-Maker lineups so far. I even like him in cash if he plays. Going up against the Giants, who can't stop the run, who can't seem to stop the pass, he should have a lot of opportunities there. He has a ton of weapons out there. They're all starting to get healthy. This could be a Jordan Howard game, sneaky enough as that is. We'll touch on him a little bit in a little bit. But this is the spot that I like Mitch Trubisky. Definitely if he obviously has to play, but I think he's going to be very low owned due to this questionable mark right here. But as you've seen, this man has 35-point upside. He's done it multiple times this year. 40-point upside, really doing that basically twice this year as well. I like him a lot. Just checking out my notes right here. Yeah, so, I mean, Rodgers, like I mentioned, he's a sneaky play this week because he's 6,200. Nobody's going to play him as a big favorite. I don't like that move, but in tournaments, you have to play moves that scare you, right, if you want to win it. Nobody wins by just taking all the median projection players or all the best stars that they could fit in and really win a tournament. Like, if you're playing tournaments, you want to win first place, obviously, but top 3 to 5 spots because then you're getting paid pennies. Especially if it's a qualifier, you're going for first place. So, doing some things that others won't with a guy like Rodgers, who I always like to target struggling veterans who are, in no question, still have a lot left in the tank. Like we've talked about Allen Robinson this year I did, LaShawn McCoy his week that he went off, Jordan Reed 2 weeks ago when he played well, highest scoring tight end. I like to target those types of players. Aaron Rodgers, he's been struggling. Like if we go up to this, for his standards, right, he's still been having a great year, 2 interceptions on the year, whatever it might be. 1 interception, I'm not sure how many he has. I believe it's only... 1 interception on the year for a guy who's thrown 20 touchdowns. That's an insane touchdown to interception ratio. He's been on a tear the past few years with that ratio. But he has been struggling, right? For a guy we're used to getting you 20 points every single week, he's barely touched that in the past month and a half, only once. So this could be a spot for him, although I do like his running back a little bit more this week. Coming down, again, we just touched on Matt Stafford. I like him at his price. I like him at his matchup against Marcus Peters in that pretty trashy Rams secondary. But again, that Rams front is good. They can get to the quarterback. If Matt Stafford gets a clean pocket or enough of a pocket and he doesn't have guys just all over him the whole game and this really gets set early on, this could be a shootout. And if this is a shootout, this is a game I love to game stack, especially because you can get Matt Ryan cheaper than Goff. You can get Kenny Golladay a little bit cheaper at a discount than like a Brandon Cooks or a Robert Woods. But then you could run it back with them. And if you want, you can maybe even get up to Gurley in that situation, depending where you go at tight end at defense. So I do like that. The other thing I'll point out, and I'm probably never going to play him, but Josh Allen has like tournament winning upside. No way ever in cash, because you can see 5-4. Like he's capable of doing that multiple times, though he's gone over 25 points, and he does it on the ground. This man had 99 rushing yards. He almost hit you the 100-yard bonus on the ground. This man can run the ball. He had 13 attempts just like Lamar. He's ran the ball pretty much all year. You can see 10 attempts here, 8 attempts, 5. Like, this guy is a running back who's underrated on the ground. You hear a lot about Mitch Trubisky. Obviously, Cam, probably the best rushing quarterback of all time. Deshaun Watson, who's toned it back a little bit. Russell Wilson toned it back a little bit. Josh Allen's the guy who runs the ball. Not somebody I'm playing probably this week, but somebody to keep an eye on who's never going to be high owned, who can get you at almost the lowest price at quarterback. Now he's priced up this week, but he was $4,400, lowest price last week, and he got you this. He absolutely smashed. So something to keep an eye on. Definitely not something I'm advocating as a huge play, but just interesting in my eyes. So let's move on to running back now, and I'll slide down here. So the first thing I want to touch on, and I want to go to Marlon Mack, who's in the concussion protocol. And we've seen this guy, I mean, he's had great games this year. He was having a great game until he got in the concussion protocol. He was a very high-owned player and didn't really pan out for only 2xing his value at 11.6 points. But the guy that I want to keep an eye on, and if Mack is out, opens up a lot of value here, is Nyheim Hines. And I think he'll be a little bit higher owned. Jacksonville does stop the run pretty well, but Nyheim Hines is a guy who gets out of the backfield in the passing game more so is where his value comes from. And if he's a starting guy, like right now he's still seeing 35% of the snaps, 40% of the snaps, around there with Marlon Mack in the game. So like it's still a committee backfield. If he's out of there, it's just him and Jordan Wilkins, who hasn't done anything this year. I have the stats right here. Nyheim Hines. So 4 games without Marlon Mack, Hines has 34 targets. The 7 games with Marlon Mack, Hines has 17 targets. So, I mean, in half the games, he has double the targets when Mack isn't in the lineup. He's averaging over 8.5 targets a game, basically right at 8.5 targets a game. The other guy that I wrote down, this is just in the wide receiver range, so getting a little off topic, but Chester Rogers without Marlon Mack, 29 targets, and with Marlon Mack, 25 targets. Now, Ryan Grant wasn't there for like 1 or 2 of those games, but those were actually the games that Rogers saw less targets. It was more so correlation when Marlon Mack was out. Those targets getting split up, it seems, more so between Hines, between Marlon Mack. You'll probably see Eric Ebron getting more since Doyle's out, but that's just a totally different story to hit on. I just think Nyheim Hines at his price, $4,100, there's tons of value, like we mentioned, down here because some injuries. We'll get to Ekeler, all those things. I think there's definitely value there. The next one that I want to go to is this man right here, who should be the highest owned player probably on the slate. Christian McCaffrey at $8,800. He's expensive. He's the highest price that he's been all year, but for good measure. Tampa Bay, when he played them last time, he went off against them. Right, he had 2 touchdowns. Like we said, took away from Cam Newton's overall stats. But you can stack him and Cam Newton. It's just going to be expensive this week as they're both the second highest price at their positions and still being high price since the first guys like earlier in the 9Ks and Patrick Mahomes is $7,600. So still pretty high price guys, possibly highest priced on most weeks. But I think that this is a situation where Christian McCaffrey's worth the price, right? Like I don't want to fade him. I'll have lineups without him in them, of course. But he's somebody that I want to build my lineups around. Probably one of the best games I've ever seen out of a running back. I'm not sure if anybody's ever done this. I've never looked up if anybody's ever gone 10 receptions for over 100 yards and a touchdown and over 125 yards or 125 yards and a touchdown. I feel like nobody has ever done that. Getting in the end zone twice. Like we said, 97%. You can see here on Draft Dashboard, 97% of his team snaps he's on the field for. That's absolutely ridiculous. Like, look, nobody even comes close to that. Even Gurley, 85% takes him off when Brown comes in. There's nobody else in this backfield that they're getting on the field, and it's because he's both a wide receiver who runs incredible routes. Like, I was saying today with my friends, if I had to build a team right now and pick any running back in the league to build, people were saying like Zeke, Kamara, and Kamara's a good one. I want that multi-guy back. It's probably between CMC, Gurley, and Saquon for me, those 3 guys. Yeah, David Johnson could be in there too. There's just so many great running backs. But Christian McCaffrey, probably comes down to Christian McCaffrey and Saquon for me. Yeah, Gurley's incredible, but I think that they're both, one, younger and both better out of the backfield. Saquon making people miss. Elusive rating for both of those guys a little bit higher. And McCaffrey's just an absolute stud, right? So I think he's definitely a lock this week. I mean, there's not much more to say about him because he's probably going to be the highest owned player of the week. Definitely from the running back position, I would say. So that's definitely, I wanted to touch on that. His just insane role in the year that he's been having. Next up, I want to go to Green Bay, like we mentioned. Huge. I love targeting huge home favorites in the running back position. It just means that you're most likely to get over that 15, closer to over that 20 rushing attempt. And Aaron Jones doesn't need that many, right? He's never had 20 career touches in a game or rushing attempts in a game. He has gotten there with receptions, but they have been steadily improving, right? 17 in a game where they were trailing in the second half. I see this as a spot where he gets his first 20 carry game. He gets 5 targets like he's been getting in that passing game. Should get in the end zone, especially with this big score. Should hit the 100-yard bonus. Aaron Jones is an absolute stud. If the Packers just give him the ball 15 to 20 times, 18 is even enough. He should get there. So I like Aaron Jones a lot, and the best play of the week that I believe is correlation between Aaron Jones and the Packers defense. Packers defense gets on the quarterback, right? They're, I think, like first in the league in sacks, or right up there, second in the league in sacks, third maybe, somewhere in the top 3 in the league in sacks now. They were first like 2 weeks ago. And Josh Rosen, that line, offensive line against that Packers defensive line, it's the #1 matchup on the week in terms of pressure rate. The Packers are supposed to get the most pressure in their respective matchup. Josh Rosen, still a rookie, makes mistakes. Pressure leads to fumbles, pick sixes, turnovers, interceptions, whatever it might be. Sack fumbles. And that's what you want out of a defense. And you can get that stack relatively cheap because Aaron Jones is only $6,700 this week for a guy who I'm trying to prioritize in most of my lineups more so than a guy like McCaffrey because of the 2,000 plus savings you get on him. Next up here, we're going to be looking at Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, I kind of passed up in my first look lineup, but he has a great matchup against Oakland. And again, he's not at home, but he's a huge favorite in a game where this could very easily be a Kareem Hunt game, right? He's come down. He hasn't had come down in price relative to his game a couple weeks ago against Arizona, where they were big home favorites as well. And I kind of like him at 7,800 relative price-wise to some of these other higher guys. I like him a lot, right? Against Oakland, he should be up big. They're like 15-point favorites. They should get him the ball. What scares me is he's kind of just shady in his target and reception game, right? Like he had couple games in a row with 6 targets, and it's all really all over the place. And Andy Reid has always kind of been a guy who he'll give the running back 15 touches like on average, but sometimes he'll give him like 8 touches. Like when they had Jamal Charles, he was getting like 8 touches multiple weeks in a row. And we're like, what is going on here? You see Hunt, who's been basically hovering around 15, but he has like weeks with 10. So he's always scary to pay up for, but he's a guy who's in that offense. He's worth it, right? Especially as a huge home or a huge favorite against Oakland, who's just more so better in the passing game, right? Like they haven't had a 300-yard passer in the year. They haven't faced Patty Mahomes though, but that does make you feel a little bit better if you're creating a narrative that it's a Kareem Hunt game, that maybe they rely a little bit more on Hunt, especially when they're going to get up big in this game, you would imagine. Next up on here, so personally, I've been debating Gurley for 500 more over CMC. I've been trying to fit that in a little bit of more lineups, and CMC's matchup is one of the best ones on the year if this wasn't Atlanta, but even Tampa Bay, I mean the Bengals as well, guys who can't cover pass-catching running backs. CMC, we know he's on the field every single touch. He's going to get every single running back touch for the most part, unless a fullback vultures like a goal line or an inches type of little carry, fullback dive. But there's definitely situations where I do want to go Gurley over CMC, and obviously I'm going to do that in some lineups. But, I mean, when we look at Gurley, yes, he's the highest priced guy. Yes, last week in a historic game on Monday Night Football, he didn't get it done, right? Like, I mean, the guy only got not even 100 yards, didn't get a touchdown, which is something very rare. You faded him in the showdown slate, you probably did very well. But he's still a guy who's averaging, what, 28.5 points. He's still a guy who's having a better year than CMC for $500 more. A lot of people are going to forget about that. Recency bias is going to get a lot of people with CMC. I don't want to try and pull anybody off of him because, like I said, I'm going to prioritize him. But I think it's interesting to kind of go with Gurley over CMC because I think Gurley will see suppressed ownership this week due to McCaffrey's matchup. Barkley right there is another guy who's interesting at his price. People are going to go down to Hunt or go up to Christian McCaffrey. I don't like Barkley's matchup at all, but based on his passing game role, which his offensive line being bad probably helps his passing game role, he gets to come out of the backfield a little bit more, and they game script him into the games. Barkley could be a guy, like always, who does great, especially if they decide to give him the ball in the second half. The man had, like, what, 4 touches in the second half after going off for over 30 fantasy points in the first half, which is absolutely terrible. I personally have a man crush on Joe Mixon. It doesn't matter the matchup, doesn't really matter the quarterback for me. He has a great matchup at home, though, against Denver. They are underdogs, so that does scare you, but they're at home. A backup quarterback in should check the ball down. We like to see this. He got 4 targets with the backup quarterback in, so you like to see that as well. But he's just a guy who gets a lot of value out of his touches. In a game where they were trailing by like 20-plus the whole game, the man gets 22 points without a 100-yard bonus, without a touchdown. That's impressive. We've seen that all year. Now he has a great matchup, and he should see more opportunities. Somebody just subscribed. I think his name was Jason, so thank you for subscribing. If you're watching this, shout out you. So Joe Mixon, I just have like a man crush on the guy. A couple other guys I want to bring up from the running backs because there's a lot. There's a lot to talk about. Matt Breida, Seattle's like the worst in yards per carry against running backs. I like Matt Breida a lot. Check on if he's healthy. Alfred Morris should be another healthy scratch. Seems like they're going to end up dropping him at some point. But Matt Breida, just a guy that I like to see in my lineups because he has such a good yards per touch. Like they were trailing last week, still hit the 100-yard bonus, still hit over 20 points without a touchdown. So somebody in a game against Seattle, yes, it's on the road, but I could see that being a good opportunity for Breida to go off. And on the other side of that, I do like Chris Carson. You see Matt Breida here, priced at $5,800. Projected to get 14 points in this model, but again, I think that would probably be higher. This is probably his median projection, with his ceiling being somewhere in the mid-20s, if not higher, if he could score twice. But yeah, so personally like Matt Breida, and I also think that for a lower-owned guy on the other side of that game, Chris Carson, who continues to get a ton of work going up against San Fran, who could be had on the ground, and they just run the ball out there, right? Russell Wilson's throwing the ball. If he's lucky, he'll throw the ball 30 times in a game. They run the ball out there. He's getting the majority of the work out there, even though there are 3 viable running backs, and he gets all the goal line work. So that's what you want to get out of Russell Wilson and this team. They should be able to move the ball in San Francisco, get close to the goal line. I like Chris Carson's odds of scoring the ball. And he's cheap, and he should be very low owned, and we've seen him go over 20 a couple times this year. We've seen him on 1 milli maker lineup. I think that he'll be definitely a sneaky play. Last thing, or second to last thing I'll touch on is this Jacksonville backfield now that we know that Fournette's going to be suspended, right? His suspension was upheld, got thrown out of the game, ejected, now he's suspended a game. I don't really want to touch any of them, right? Like, I'm fine waiting and seeing. Fournette's role in this offense is incredible. He was drafted high, and they're like, okay, let's hand his ball to this guy every time. Yeldon's been serviceable, especially when he gets 15 touches. He averages, like, what, over 15 points in a fantasy game in his career, so that's pretty impressive. He's been serviceable. Like, he tore up KC, which a lot of running backs have done this year. Like, basically every single running back has done this year. Did well against the Jets. Like, he got his work in the passing game, which is where he's going to have to get his work, and they should be trailing in this game to Indy. So if I had to pick one, it's Yeldon, and I mean price indicates that because he's the better play. But Hyde is pretty cheap, and I think some people are going to use Hyde just in, like, tournaments or cash game lineups to get up to other people. I'm not going to do it because I could see Carlos Hyde being the guy like Chris Ivory last year, who maybe he'll get like a first down run. Maybe he'll get the goal line work as well. He should get the goal line work, but his upside is pretty limited. Like, I see this being his upside, like 10 carries, 33 yards. He's going to have to get, yeah, Jason Swaney, you just commented, nice job, you subbed. Thank you, I appreciate it. Great to have you here. I'll answer that personally right after this. But yeah, like, he could be a guy who literally gets you this. He's going to be very reliant because they're going to use Yeldon in the passing game on scoring touchdowns, like LeGarrette Blount, things like that. 3,300. I don't even want to touch it. Sure, he's like a punt play, and he's cheap to get other guys in your lineup. So in tournaments, that makes sense if it gets you up to a higher receiver. But for the most part, I think he's very viable to probably get you 6 points tops, and he really needs to get in the end zone. So I'm going to stay away from that. Austin Eckler is not on the main slate. That's the only thing I would touch on. Austin Eckler is going to have an incredible role like we saw him against Tennessee in London. Had basically all the snaps in that game. But Justin Jackson, like the young guy out there, he seems good, but it's Eckler's show, basically. Justin Jackson will be kind of like that bruiser guy. Going up against Pittsburgh, Eckler's in a good spot, but we'll talk. You can touch on that a little bit more from the showdown slate. Moving on to wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, most expensive guy, only in tournaments, not in cash for me. Like, even in tournaments, that's just so much money for a guy who doesn't get. Now he's getting actually a little bit more target share out there with Mahomes there. Like, we see him getting a little bit more double digits back-to-back weeks. But we're used to seeing this more so. But now that he's getting the targets, he's viable for that price. He could be a guy who scores 2 touchdowns in the first half, and he sets you off right there. Doesn't even have to touch the ball in the second half, and you're fine, right? But 9,100, I'm going to stay away from it. I'm going to stay away from Hopkins as they've been running the ball a lot more since Watson got hurt. Running the ball a lot more. That's why Lamar Miller's been interesting. Didn't touch on Lamar Miller, but he is an interesting play. I don't want to touch on every player. I'll go down and I'll say that both OBJ and Julio Jones are dirt cheap. Both have like decently tough matchups, but Baltimore's secondary they've had their faults this year. Jimmy Smith isn't a #1 cornerback. He hasn't been having a great year. His PFF grades are down. Basically to the lowest they've ever been. And Julio's just been on an absolute tear, as we've seen, 20-plus 100-yard game in, like, what, 6 straight games. He has 8 games of 100 yards this year. Should have more. He just missed 96. The man's a monster. He's at home. He's in the dome. That's where he thrives. So I like Julio a lot this week. The next play is Cooks versus Woods, right? Like, you can play them both, but if I had to pick one, I'm probably going to go Robert Woods. Darius Slay is probably going to see a lot of Cooks on the outside. Woods will go into the slot with Josh Reynolds on the other outside part out there for the Rams. And I like Cooks. He's had like 70 yards, I think, every single game this year, at least 70 yards if you go through this. Yeah, the man's been absolutely okay. Week 1, he didn't have 70 yards. Every other game, the man's had 70 yards, no matter the matchup in the slot. The Lions are one of the worst teams in the NFL at their second and third cornerback positions. It's basically Slay and then a bunch of guys off the street. I like Woods over that, but Cooks obviously has better tournament upside because he could burn people, but Slay should be able to hold his own against him. This range right here is the range that I love for wide receivers. It starts probably at Edelman, but really at Woods. If it's me, it's Woods, Golladay, Sanders, Boyd, Hilton. Like, those guys are all guys that I want to play. Golladay, like I said, his targets are just insanely up. Marvin Jones is now placed on IR, and basically I had this little stat here. With Marvin Jones on IR the last 2 games, targets, Kenny Golladay, 22. Ellington, which is very surprising, 16, and Theo Riddick, 14. Those are basically the only 3 guys getting work the past 2 weeks without him. Golladay being the main guy. Sure, he might draw extra coverage over the top that might help out whoever's on the other side, TJ Jones, who hasn't done anything. But Galladay's the guy they're going to scheme around to get the ball, especially in the red zone. Give me all the Golladay I could handle this week, who had somewhat of a disappointing game on Thanksgiving, but he still had 8 targets for 90 yards, and that's a bad game for him. I'll take that. Sanders' role, he's already past everything he did last year, right? He already has more receptions, I think the same amount of targets. He has like 92 targets, the same that he had last year at the end of the year at this point, but still weeks left to go, like 4 games left for them. And he still has more receptions, way more yards, more touchdowns, everything. The man's going off. He gets all the looks from Keenum out there. They love him. I love him, especially in the slot against the Cincinnati team who can't stop anything in the air. It's pretty bad right now out there for Cincinnati. I like Sanders. I like Keenum. I didn't touch on Keenum. I like Keenum this week a lot. Give me Phillip Lindsay on the running backs. I would touch on all these guys, but I don't want to talk about every single player in the slate. I would like to, but as one person, it takes a while. If I can get a co-host on that, that'd be great, especially podcast-wise. But Emmanuel Sanders is awesome. I love him so much in this situation against the Bengals. Like I said, these are the 2 guys I want to build around. Tyler Boyd depends on what's going to happen out there, right? Denver, he's probably going to get a lot in the slot with Chris Harris. Don't like that. But if A.J. Green comes back, maybe then you can play him with a little bit more confidence. He got a lot of looks. I think he got 7 looks once the backup quarterback Driscoll came in the game. So that definitely helps him. But the guy who got the most targets is the tight end C.J. Uzomah, who I'm definitely looking at this week. After that, check on Hilton just because Ramsey might be out this week. But let's see what else we have here at the wide receiver position. Yeah, so all that we really have left that I want to touch on is that Jarvis Landry is the cheapest he's been all year, and I've wrote him out for 3 straight weeks now, just saying, okay, I want to jump on the veterans, like I say, who have been down and everybody's getting off of it. Everybody in the world is off Jarvis Landry because he's literally lost some people 6 figures this year, like some of the higher stakes people. Just been absolutely terrible except for really 1 week of the year. And he's had incredible matchups, right? The Bengals, Atlanta, KC, 3 passing teams that you can literally eat against, and he just hasn't been getting it. Now Baker Mayfield has been passing the ball around a lot more. It's like 7 different receivers each week the past like 2 to 3 weeks. That hurts Jarvis. Jarvis isn't a big, deep threat guy. He runs great routes. It just seems like he doesn't have that connection with Baker right now, and Baker's fine and open-minded to go other places with the ball. So Jarvis is a guy that at his price I like him just because of his production, but his targets have come down because Baker's more eager to spread the ball out. They're still running the ball 20-plus times a game with Nick Chubb. So it's a little scary out there in this new offense. It doesn't seem like they're trying to get Jarvis the ball as much. We saw Callaway have a game and obviously Chubb and Njoku have good games against the Bengals, like you should against the Bengals, and Landry still can't get off it. Against Houston, it's not a great spot, but in the corner, in the slot, it is a pretty good spot for him actually against the Houston slot cornerbacks. So definitely something I'm willing to play again, even though it's burnt me so much. But at this point, I know he's going to blow up at least one more time this year. You have to imagine. I want to be on it when it happens. So that's all really that I'll touch on there. The only guys that I'll touch on in this cheaper range, if you want to go to the 4K and below, I like, where is he? Adam Humphries, I like him. He's getting tons more snaps right now than Chris Godwin, which is interesting. He continues to produce out there. He is kind of touchdown dependent, but if you play him in cash at his price, he's still cheap, right? They haven't raised his price all that much from when it's been in this 3K range all year. Now it's 42. I like Humphries. The other guy I'll touch on is Sutton. He's been pretty terrible, but based on his matchup, this is the spot that I kind of like Sutton to do something. He's very reliant on deep balls, not intermediate screens, but I think maybe he gets one of those deep balls this week and get in the end zone for you. The last guy, who I think might be a little bit chalky based on like his price and really what his production is going to be, Aitman. Jordy should be playing, but Aitman's the guy who got all the targets last week. He's probably the more talented guy at this point, going up against Kansas City, big underdogs. They are at home if that helps. They should be throwing the ball. If he can get 10 targets again, I like him for his price because he basically did as bad as he could with 10 targets, 16 yards on 3 catches. So if he can get anywhere more than that, he basically needs to get you, what, like 12 points for him to hit value for you, 11 points. And at that price, it's not that much to ask for 4 catches for 60 yards from a guy who's probably going to be the number 1 against a pretty against a defense that when they're on the road, they give up a little bit more than at home in Kansas City. That's it for wide receivers. I touched on Ellington, 16 targets in the past 2 games. I think he's going to have a lot of low ownership. Check his status, and he's at a cheap price, so he's another guy down here that I do like. And with that, we will move on to the tight end position. All right, so now we move over to the tight end position. And like usual, the tight end position I spend a little less time on because it's pretty much been a swampland all year. But this week, we actually have some interesting looks. So it's going to be Eric Ebron chalk week, right? Like, I think he'll be upwards of 30% owned in some larger field tournaments. And I mean, rightfully so. He's just leads the league in touchdown receptions. He's getting a ton of work out there. Jack Doyle's out. Mo Kaliaks, or whatever his name is also going to be out. Ebron hasn't practiced now as of Thursday, but I think he should be going in this one. And he's just a guy who's going to see tons of targets. Like when Doyle was out, Ebron was seeing this. His role was absolutely incredible, and he started to actually produce. He got the change of scenery out of Detroit, and he's done really well. I do like Ebron. I think a very good fade off of Ebron in the same price ranges are going to be Njoku. I don't think anybody will be on him. He has a good matchup. He just came off of a good game. Still talented guy out there who can get in the red zone for you. I do like Njoku because of his ownership lower, right? Like in a vacuum, Ebron's probably the best play on this slate, tight end wise. But when you factor in price, he's still a pretty good play. But then when you factor in ownership, he becomes less of a good play if you're trying to win something and get an edge. I think Greg Olsen will also be probably a top 3 highly owned guy with Travis Kelce, or actually maybe even Kittle. Olsen should be getting some more work. He's running basically every single play out there. And he has a very good matchup against Tampa Bay, where he did score and probably had his best game of the year the last time out. So give me Olsen this week as well. I will touch on George Kittle. George Kittle, it seemed like he had a bad game last week as a chalk, but he still had a ton of targets. He had multiple penalties called against him, defensive penalties, and there was no Marquise Goodwin last week. So basically, the middle of the field was the only place that they can go. The defense knew that in Tampa Bay. They kind of halted him a little bit. But, I mean, still, 11.8 points. Yes, you paid up for him last week, so it didn't pay off. But he's still a guy who's not going to really – he has a high floor, basically, based on his targets. But he does have Nick Mullins throwing in the ball. I do like going back to him this week. But, again, I'm paying down this week. And in a lot of places, Cameron Brate makes a lot of sense. He should garner maybe like 6% ownership. And a lot of places, I'm going to go all the way down. He's been talked about a little bit in the industry. Malakoff, it seems like Jake Buck got hurt, and then Heuerman came in and saw all the targets. It seems like Keenum likes his intermediate targets with these tight ends, or low A-dot targets even. Lacoste came in, he caught a touchdown, he got 4 targets and basically like a half without Heuerman. He got 12 points. He's at the minimum price at $2,500. You need 7 points out of this guy who's caught a ball every single week that he's played, right? He didn't play since like week 3 or whatever. Caught a ball every single week that he's been on the active roster and actually playing in a game. So give me all the Matt Lacoste this week at the lowest price to let you fit in, a lot of other guys. But yeah, that's pretty much it for tight end. Defense I touched on. I like the Packers defense the most this week. Pairing them up with Aaron Jones is something I'm going to prioritize. Big home favorites. Rosen will probably have to throw the ball. A rookie guy throwing the ball with pressure. Give me a turnover or 2, maybe a defensive score even. But that's all that I really want to touch on right there. Let me see if there's anything else really. Oh yeah, the other thing that I wanted to touch on at tight end quickly, and it's on the Sunday night slate, so we can't look at it right now, is Jesse James, right? So Vance McDonald might not play. Jesse James is averaging 13.5 fantasy points per game when Vance McDonald, or when Jesse James sees 5 targets. And if Vance McDonald isn't in there against the Chargers, where there should be some pass script, I can see Jesse James getting 5 targets. He's had some huge games when that happens, and he's averaging 13.5 points a game when that does happen. So definitely could be a guy who ranks in the top 5 at tight end agility and elusiveness, who can get you some points in those showdown slates. That's all I'll touch on right now. That was the breakdown video. I'm going to get this out as soon as possible to you guys. Remember, this is the 500 sub giveaway as well. So get down in those comments. Who will be the highest scoring DraftKings points-wise? So by DraftKings points, which quarterback will have the most points on Sunday's main slate? So we're not counting the Sunday night game, just Sunday's main slate, those 13 games, 26 quarterbacks basically. Who will score the most points? We will take whoever gets it right below if you are a subscriber. So that's a big question. Adam Null just subscribe. So Adam Nail, you can get in this and do it as well. Yeah, subscribers only, and you'll get this lifetime giveaway to Draft Dashboard. Also check the description. You can sign up for Draft Dashboard 30 days for $1. So I mean, it's basically free, but lifetime subscription if you win that giveaway. And how I'll judge it is basically, if you get the giveaway and you get the right name, if you're the only one with it, you win. If there's multiple people, I'll put them into a random generator and we'll pick it. And the winner will be announced on Monday's episode of Week 14 First Look Lineup. So make sure to get everything in there. You can see how good of a play McCaffrey is this week right here, and Kareem Hunt, which we touched on. So yeah, check out this site. Sign up with the link below if you want, and get in the comments. Subscribe. Whoever's viewing this right now, subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 subscribers literally this week. Like, we're 400 off. Can we get a huge push? It would take a miracle, but let's do it. Got the fresh cut. Got a little formal to go to tonight. A little buttoned up for you guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy this good Thursday night game tonight. Check out the Thursday First Look if you're seeing this before Thursday night game starts. My name's Sal. Best of luck. Be safe, everybody. Peace.